The massive crystalline chamber stretched high above the gathered alien leaders, its walls pulsing with soft blue light that cast strange shadows across dozens of different species. Representatives from 12 different galaxies had traveled here for this emergency meeting, their various forms creating a bizarre collection of scales, tentacles, chitinous armor, and glowing energy fields. Elder Archivist Veltar moved slowly toward the center podium, his 8 tentacles carrying data crystals that glowed ominously red. The ancient keeper of forbidden knowledge rarely spoke at these councils, and when he did, it usually meant trouble. His weathered face, marked by centuries of storing dangerous secrets, showed deep concern as he activated the holographic display system. The chamber fell silent as images began flowing through the air above them. Ship after ship appeared in the projection, each one representing a failed mission to the mysterious third planet of the Sol system. The data was damning and terrifying. For 300 years, the hegemony had been sending reconnaissance probes to observe this world called Earth, and not a single one had ever returned. "Look at these numbers," Veltar's voice cracked with age and worry. "Probe Fleet Designation 7741, sent 150 years ago, gone without a trace. Deep Space Scanner Array 2891, launched 73 years ago with our most advanced stealth technology, vanished completely. Even our quantum phase observers, which should be undetectable by any known science, simply disappeared the moment they entered that system." The various alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some whispered among themselves in languages that sounded like grinding metal or singing crystals. Others remained perfectly still, their multiple eyes fixed on the disturbing data streaming past them. Admiral Thecamore rose from his seat with a dismissive gesture, his massive form towering over the other council members. His reptilian features were marked by battle scars from a dozen different wars, and his scaled hide gleamed with the confidence of someone who had never faced defeat. The medals covering his chest told the story of countless conquered worlds and enslaved species. "Equipment failures," he declared loudly, his voice echoing through the chamber with absolute certainty. "Nothing more than technological malfunctions and operator error. I have personally overseen the conquest of 47 different star systems, and not once have we encountered a primitive world capable of threatening even our oldest scout ships." Several other military commanders nodded in agreement, their own battle records speaking to similar experiences. Throughout the known galaxies, the pattern was always the same. Advanced civilizations conquered primitive ones. Technology defeated ignorance. Numbers overwhelmed the weak. It had been this way for millions of years. Veltar's tentacles writhed with frustration as he pulled up more data. "But Admiral, these aren't just equipment failures. The patterns are too consistent, too deliberate. Every probe that approaches Earth's solar system follows the same trajectory until it reaches approximately 1 astronomical unit from the planet. Then all signals cease immediately. No debris, no distress calls, no electromagnetic signatures of destruction. They simply stop existing." The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives began talking among themselves. Some species communicated through color changes in their skin, others through subsonic vibrations that made the floor tremble slightly. The air filled with the sounds and sights of a dozen different forms of alien communication. Council leader Mordeth finally stood, his 4 powerful arms rising high above his head to demand silence. His species had ruled the hegemony for over 2,000 years, building an empire that spanned multiple galaxies through superior technology and ruthless efficiency. His face, a mixture of insect and mammalian features, showed the kind of cold intelligence that had made his people the ultimate galactic predators. "Enough debate," Mordeth announced, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power. "This Sol 3 presents a mystery, nothing more. Admiral Thecamore, you have volunteered your grand fleet for this mission. Tell us about your capabilities." Thecamore straightened with obvious pride, gesturing toward the tactical displays that suddenly filled the air around them. 2,000 vessels of the most advanced design in galactic history, plasma cannons capable of cracking planets, shield generators that can withstand supernova explosions, and troop transports carrying 5 million of our finest warriors. My flagship alone possesses enough firepower to sterilize the surface of any world within hours. The displays showed sleek warships bristling with weapons, their hulls gleaming with energy fields that bent light around them. Massive carriers held thousands of smaller attack craft, while support vessels contained enough troops and equipment to occupy an entire star system indefinitely. Mordeth nodded approvingly before turning back to address the full council. The decision is made. Admiral Thekmor will take his grand fleet to Sol 3, crush whatever primitive resistance these humans might offer, and return with their planet's resources and population. This Earth will become another jewel in our empire's crown. The vote was swift and unanimous, despite Veltar's continued protests. As the council members began filing out of the chamber, discussing trade routes and resource distribution plans, the old archivist remained behind, staring at the data that continued flowing through the holographic displays. His ancient eyes held a deep sadness, as if he already knew what fate awaited the Grand Fleet and its confident admiral. The space around Admiral Thekmor's command bridge suddenly filled with blinding light as 2,000 warships materialized from hyperspace. Travel. The massive alien fleet had expected to arrive at the edge of a quiet solar system, home to nothing more than primitive humans who had barely learned to leave their own planet. What they found instead made every sensor on every ship begin screaming. Urgent warnings. Thekmor's scaled face twisted in confusion as he stared at the tactical displays surrounding his command chair. Where there should have been empty space and a single inhabited world, his instruments showed a bustling hub of activity that defied everything the hegemony knew about human civilization. Massive orbital defense platforms hung in space like metal. Spiders, their weapon arrays tracking his fleet's every movement with disturbing precision. "Sir, we're detecting over 300 defensive installations throughout the system," reported his tactical officer, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "Power readings are off the charts. Some of these structures are larger than our biggest space stations. But the defense platforms were just the beginning. Asteroid mining operations stretched across the entire asteroid belt, turning what should have been floating rocks into a network of industrial complexes. Massive ships moved between the asteroids like busy ants, hauling materials and resources on a scale that suggested centuries of advanced space-based industry. "How is this possible?" Thekmor muttered, his confidence beginning to crack. "Our intelligence reports indicated these humans had barely achieved basic spaceflight. They should still be using chemical rockets and primitive satellites." His science officer, a tall being with multiple eyes arranged around his elongated head, worked frantically at his station. "Admiral, I'm reading ship configurations that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of physics. Some of these vessels appear to be phasing in and out of normal spacetime. Others seem to be generating gravitational fields without any visible means of propulsion." The alien fleet hung motionless at the system's edge, its commanders struggling to process what they were seeing. Every assumption they had made about Earth and its inhabitants was crumbling before their eyes. This wasn't a primitive world ripe for conquest. This was a sophisticated civilization that had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. A soft chime echoed through Thekmor's bridge, indicating an incoming transmission. On the main view screen, a sleek ship appeared, approaching under the universal colors of diplomatic contact. The vessel itself was a work of art, its hull flowing like liquid metal, while energy patterns danced across its surface in mesmerizing displays. The transmission activated, and suddenly Thekmor found himself face to face with a human being. Admiral Park Daeho appeared on the screen, his uniform crisp and professional, his expression calm and composed. The human's dark eyes held a depth of intelligence and experience that immediately made the alien admiral uncomfortable. Unknown. "Fleet, welcome to Sol System," Park said in perfect galactic standard, his voice carrying the tone of someone completely in control of the situation. "I am Admiral Park Daeho of the Terran Defense Coalition. Please state your intentions in our space and the nature of your visit." The politeness of the request caught Thekmor off guard. He had expected cowering primitives or desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, he was being addressed as if he were simply another visitor, requesting permission to enter someone's territory. The casual confidence in the human's voice was more unsettling than any threat could have been. Thekmor's mandibles clicked together, in what his species considered amusement, though the sound came out more nervous than he intended. "I am Admiral Thekmor of the Hegemony Grand Fleet. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our empire. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift. Resist and we will make your entire species suffer before we claim your planet." The threat that had worked on countless other worlds throughout the galaxy seemed to have no effect. On the human admiral, Park's expression didn't change, his slight smile remaining fixed in place as if he had heard these exact words many times before. 17 previous fleets made identical demands, Park replied, his tone remaining conversational and almost friendly. Each one arrived with overwhelming force, superior technology, and absolute confidence in their inevitable victory. I offer you the same choice we gave to them. Depart peacefully and return to your homes, or stay and visit our underwater museums where their remains rest with full honor and respect. The casual mention of 17 previous fleets sent a chill through Thekmor's bridge crew. 17 fleets meant 17 different species, 17 different technological approaches, 17 different attempts at conquest, and according to this human, all 17 had failed so completely that their remains were now museum displays. Thekmor threw back his massive head and roared with laughter, the sound echoing through his bridge like thunder. The idea that this single human, representing a species that should have been crawling in caves just centuries ago, was threatening his grand fleet was beyond ridiculous. It was insulting. "You dare threaten me," Thekmor snarled, his amusement turning to rage. "I command 2,000 of the most advanced warships in galactic history. My fleet has enough firepower to turn your entire planet into molten slag within hours. Your pathetic little civilization exists only because we have allowed it to exist." Park's smile never wavered, and his next words were delivered with the same calm professionalism as before. "Admiral, you have 1 hour to consider our offer. After that, the choice will be removed from your hands. Please use this time wisely." The transmission ended, leaving Thekmor staring at a blank screen while his bridge crew exchanged worried glances. The human's confidence was either the result of complete insanity or something far more dangerous. The hour passed like a countdown to disaster, though Admiral Thekmor refused to acknowledge the growing sense of dread spreading through his fleet. His massive armada moved into attack formation near Earth's moon, a strategic position that should have given him complete tactical advantage. Luna hung before them like a grey sentinel, its ancient craters bearing silent witness to what was about to unfold. "All ships prepare for full assault," Thekmor commanded from his flagship's bridge, his voice carrying across 2,000 vessels through quantum communication arrays. "Target their orbital platforms first, then move to planetary bombardment. Positions. Show these primitives the true power of the hegemony." The first wave of attacks began exactly as Thekmor expected. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids fired in perfect synchronization, their brilliant beams streaking across space toward human defensive positions. Quantum torpedoes launched from hidden tubes, each one carrying enough destructive force to level entire cities. The combined firepower was absolutely overwhelming, enough to crush any known resistance in the galaxy. But something went wrong almost immediately. Commander Kim So-young's destroyer, a sleek vessel, barely 1/10 the size of Thekmor's smallest cruiser, did something that made every alien sensor operator question their own sanity. As the plasma beam struck its hull, the ship simply became transparent. The devastating energy passed harmlessly through what looked like empty space, yet the human vessel remained clearly visible on all their screens. "What in the name of the void is happening?" Thekmor roared, watching his most powerful weapons pass through the enemy ship like it was made of nothing but light and shadow. His science officer frantically worked at multiple displays, trying to make sense of readings that defied everything they knew about matter and energy. "Sir, the ship appears to be shifting its molecular structure between different dimensional phases. It's solid enough to remain functional, but ethereal enough to avoid physical damage." The impossible became routine as more human ships began demonstrating similar abilities. Some flickered in and out of visible space, others seemed to bend and flow like liquid while maintaining their structural integrity. The laws of physics that governed the rest of the galaxy apparently didn't apply to human technology. Then Lieutenant Han Woo-jin's fighter squadron did something that made Thekmor's tactical officers openly question their own competence. The small human fighters simply disappeared from one location and reappeared behind the alien formation without traveling through the space in between. One moment they were facing the front of Thekmor's fleet, the next they were attacking from the rear with devastating precision. "How did they get behind us?" screamed the tactical commander, his multiple eyes darting between displays that showed human fighters in positions they shouldn't have been able to reach. "They didn't move through normal space. There's no hyperspace signature, no dimensional rift, no propulsion trail. They just appeared. The human fighters moved through the battle like predators through a school of fish. They seemed to swim through space-time itself, appearing wherever they were needed most, striking with surgical precision before vanishing again. Every time the alien fleet tried to target them, they were already somewhere else, hitting vulnerable spots with weapons that seemed impossibly effective for their small size. But the real shock came when Thekmor's own weapons began working against him. His quantum torpedoes, designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer destructive force, struck human vessels and simply disappeared into their hulls. Instead of exploding, the weapons seemed to be absorbed, their energy converted into power. That made the human ships glow brighter and move faster. "Sir, their defensive grids are somehow converting our attacks into fuel," reported his weapons officer, his voice filled with disbelief. "Every torpedo we fire, every energy beam we shoot, it all just makes them stronger." Energy weapons that should have sliced through human hulls like butter instead bent around the ships in impossible curves, redirected by fields that treated destructive force like water flowing around a stone. The more the alien fleet attacked, the more powerful the human defenders became. Thekmor watched his carefully planned assault turn into a nightmare as human ships began moving through his formations like ghosts. They passed through solid armor plating as if it didn't exist, their weapons striking internal systems while their hulls remained untouchable. His mighty fleet, built to conquer galaxies, was being dismantled by technology that shouldn't have been possible. The final horror came when boarding pods detached from human vessels and approached his flagship. Thekmor ordered all defensive systems activated, expecting to blast the small craft out of space before they could reach his ship. Instead, the pods simply passed through his hull like it was made of air. "Impossible," he whispered, watching on internal cameras as human soldiers walked through solid metal walls as easily as stepping through doorways. They moved through his ship like spirits, their bodies somehow occupying the same space as his vessel's structure, without any conflict. The humans didn't need to cut through airlocks or blast through bulkheads. They simply walked where they wanted to go, their technology allowing them to exist in harmony with solid matter when it suited their purposes. Security doors meant nothing, armor plating provided no protection, and weapons couldn't target enemies who existed partially outside normal space. As alarms screamed throughout his flagship and his crew reported human boarders appearing in every critical section simultaneously, Thekmor finally understood what Elder Archivist Veltar had been trying to tell the Council. The warnings hadn't been about equipment failures or measurement errors. They had been about something far more terrifying. Earth's defenders weren't just advanced. They had transcended the basic rules that governed how the universe worked, turning physics itself into a weapon that made them essentially untouchable while keeping their own offensive capabilities devastatingly real. The battle was over before it had truly begun, and Thekmor's Grand Fleet was about to become the 18th addition to humanity's underwater museums. Admiral Thekmor found himself sitting in what could only be described as the most unsettling museum he had ever encountered. The chamber aboard the human command vessel stretched far beyond what the ship's external dimensions should have allowed, another impossible feat of human engineering that hurt his head to contemplate. The walls were lined with artifacts, weapons, and technological displays from civilizations he recognized, and many he didn't. As his eyes adjusted to the soft lighting, Thekmor began to understand the true horror of his situation. Those weren't just random museum pieces decorating the walls. Each section represented a different species, a different civilization, different failed attempt at conquering Earth. Crystalline energy cores that pulsed with familiar light sat next to biomechanical components that still seemed partially alive. Weapon systems from dozens of different technological approaches were mounted like trophies, each one telling the story of a species that had thought itself superior to humanity. Admiral Lee Min-ho entered the chamber with the quiet confidence of someone who had conducted this same conversation many times before. The human commander moved between the displays with casual familiarity, occasionally touching an artifact or adjusting a holographic projection. His uniform bore no flashy decorations or conquest medals, yet he carried himself with the authority of someone who had never truly been threatened. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Horizon," Lee said, his voice carrying the same calm professionalism that had marked humanity's initial diplomatic contact. "I apologize for the circumstances of your arrival, but you did choose to ignore our peaceful alternative." Thekmore's throat felt dry as he tried to process what he was seeing. "These artifacts, they're from the Crystalline Shard Empire. That weapon system belongs to the Void Hunters. How do you have technology from species that disappeared thousands of years ago?" Lee smiled slightly, the expression somehow both friendly and terrifying. "They didn't disappear, Admiral. They're all here in one form or another. Their ships rest in our ocean museums. Their technology has been integrated into our defensive systems, and their knowledge lives on in our databases. Some of their survivors even chose to join our coalition after they understood what Earth truly represents." Captain HFY stepped forward, her hands dancing across a complex control panel that materialized from thin air. Suddenly, the chamber, filled with holographic displays showing the evolution of human technology over impossible spans of time. The progression was breathtaking and horrifying in equal measure. "The first invasion fleet arrived 50,000 years ago," Lee explained, gesturing toward the earliest displays. "The Bone Crushers, we called them. Massive creatures who thought they could simply land on Earth and devour our ancestors. They were wrong, but they taught us valuable lessons about biological adaptation and predator psychology." The holographic timeline advanced, showing wave after wave of different species attempting to conquer Earth. Each invasion was met with initial human defeat, followed by rapid adaptation and eventual complete reversal of fortune. Humanity didn't just survive these encounters. They thrived on them. "The Shard Empire came next about 45,000 years ago," HFY added, highlighting a section of the timeline that showed beautiful crystalline structures. "They introduced us to energy manipulation on a quantum level. Their crystal technology seemed unbeatable until we learned to harmonize with it rather than fight against it." Thekmore watched in growing horror as the displays showed how humans had systematically absorbed the knowledge and technology of every species that had ever threatened them. The Void Collective's dimensional folding techniques, the Silicon Dominion's consciousness transfer abilities, the Metal Swarm's self-replicating technology, all of it had been studied, understood, and improved upon. "Your parasites," Thekmore whispered, his scaled hide rippling with revulsion. "You feed on other civilizations, stealing their knowledge and incorporating it into your own." Lee's expression remained patient, almost understanding. "We prefer to think of ourselves as the ultimate students, Admiral. Every species that has come to Earth with conquest in mind has taught us something valuable. The aggressive ones provide technological advancement through forced education. The peaceful ones become genuine allies and trading partners." The holographic displays shifted to show Earth's current defensive capabilities, and Thekmore realized he was looking at the combined technological achievements of hundreds of different civilizations, all refined and perfected by human ingenuity. Weapons that bent space and time, shields that converted attacks into power, ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was a technological arsenal that represented the collected knowledge of countless species. Earth became a testing ground disguised as a prize, Lee continued, moving to stand before a display showing the current state of galactic civilization. "We don't go out seeking conquests or expanding our territory. We simply wait for the aggressive species to come to us, drawn by the apparent vulnerability of a single inhabited world." HFY activated another display showing a complex web of relationships between different species throughout the galaxy. The peaceful civilizations trade with us, learn from us, and prosper under our protection. The aggressive ones either learn to change their ways or become permanent residents of our museums. Either way, they contribute to the betterment of galactic civilization. The true scope of humanity's influence became clear as Thekmor stared at the galactic map. Species that he had assumed were simply extinct or mysteriously disappeared had actually been processed through Earth's system. Some had reformed and joined the growing coalition of peaceful civilizations. Others had been permanently removed from the galactic stage, their aggressive tendencies ended forever. "You've been culling the galaxy," Thekmor said, his voice barely above a whisper. "For 50,000 years you've been systematically removing aggressive species and reshaping galactic civilization according to your own design." Lee nodded solemnly. "The galaxy is a dangerous place, Admiral. Predator species spread like cancer, consuming everything in their path until they eventually destroy themselves or are destroyed by something stronger. We simply accelerate that natural process while preserving the knowledge and technology that might otherwise be lost." The chamber fell silent as Thekmor contemplated the implications. Humanity hadn't just survived for 50 millennia by accident. They had been deliberately cultivating galactic civilization, pruning away the aggressive species while nurturing those that showed potential for peaceful coexistence. Earth wasn't just a world, it was a filter, separating the worthy from the unworthy on a galactic scale. "What happens to us now?" Thekmor asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Lee's smile returned, still carrying that unsettling mixture of friendliness and finality. "That depends entirely on you, Admiral. Every species gets the same choice we offered you initially. Some choose wisdom, others choose pride. The choice you make will determine whether your people join our coalition as reformed allies or become another educational exhibit in our ever-expanding curriculum of survival." The weight of 50,000 years of human history pressed down on Admiral Thekmor as he sat in the museum chamber, surrounded by the technological remains of civilizations that had made the same mistake he had. Admiral Lee Min-ho stood patiently. Before him, hands clasped behind his back, waiting for the alien commander to process everything he had learned about Earth's true nature. "I need you to understand something, Admiral," Lee said quietly, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had seen this moment play out countless times before. "We don't take pleasure in what we do. Every species that comes to Earth thinking they can conquer us forces us to make the same difficult choice. We would much rather welcome you as friends and trading partners than add your technology to our defensive systems." Thekmor's scaled hands trembled as he stared at the artifacts surrounding him. Each piece represented not just advanced technology, but entire civilizations that had been judged and found wanting. The Bone Crushers, the Shard Empire, the Void Collective, the Silicon Dominion, all of them had arrived at Earth with the same confidence he had possessed just hours earlier. "How many?" Thekmor asked, his voice barely audible. "How many species have you processed through your system?" Captain Yu-Ji Hai consulted a holographic display that materialized beside her. 143 aggressive species have been permanently integrated into our defensive network over the past 50 millennia. 67 others chose reformation and now contribute to peaceful galactic civilization as valued allies. Your species will be number 144, or 68, depending on the choice you make. The numbers hit Thekmor like physical blows. 210 different species had encountered Earth's testing system, and not one had managed to conquer the planet. More terrifying still was the realization that humanity had been deliberately shaping galactic civilization for longer than most species had existed. Admiral Lee moved to stand before a massive viewport that showed Earth hanging in space like a blue and white gem. "We didn't choose this role, Admiral. It was forced upon us by the first species that decided we looked weak enough to conquer. But once we understood what we could become, what we could accomplish, we embraced our responsibility to the galaxy." Colonel Choi Da-un entered the chamber, her expression professional but not unkind. She had escorted dozens of defeated commanders through this same process, helping them understand their options while maintaining the dignity that every sentient being deserved, regardless of their past actions. "Admiral Thekmore," she said formally, "if you're ready, we can proceed to the communications array. You'll need to contact your leadership and explain the situation. The choice your species makes will affect not just you and your surviving crew, but your entire civilization." The walk to the communications center felt like a march to his own execution. Thekmore passed through corridors lined with more artifacts, more reminders of species that had thought themselves superior to humanity. Some displays showed peaceful integration ceremonies, where reformed species had joined Earth's coalition with celebration and hope. Others showed the final moments of civilizations that had chosen pride over wisdom. The communications array itself was a marvel of integrated technology, combining systems from dozens of different species into something that could reach across galactic distances instantly. Thekmore recognized components from his own people's quantum communication networks, seamlessly blended with crystalline amplifiers from the Shard Empire and dimensional processors from the Void Collective. "Take your time," Colonel Choi said gently, activating the system and stepping back to give him privacy. "Remember, you're not just speaking for yourself. You're determining the future of everyone in the hegemony." Thekmore's hands shook as he composed his message. How could he explain to the arrogant council members that their mighty empire had just encountered something beyond their understanding? How could he make them comprehend that Earth wasn't a prize to be won, but a test to be passed or failed? The holographic projection activated, showing the familiar crystalline chamber where the Hegemony Council conducted their business. Council leader Mordeth appeared on screen, his forearms crossed impatiently, as he waited for news of victory and conquest. "Admiral Thekmore," Mordeth said tersely, "report your progress. Have you secured the human homeworld for the hegemony?" "Council leader," Thekmore began, his voice heavy with defeat and newfound wisdom, "I must inform you that Earth is not what we believed it to be. The humans are not primitive and they are not defenseless. They are something far more dangerous than anything we have ever encountered." Mordeth's expression shifted from impatience to concern as he noticed the unfamiliar background behind his admiral. "Where are you? What has happened to the Grand Fleet?" "The Grand Fleet has been defeated," Thekmore said simply. "Not destroyed, but absorbed. The humans have offered us a choice that they have given to over 200 other species throughout galactic history. We can join their coalition as reformed allies, learning to coexist peacefully with other civilizations, or we can remain as permanent guests while they study our technology and integrate it into their defensive systems." The council chamber erupted in shocked voices as the other members realized what they were hearing. Mordeth raised his arms for silence, his face showing the first cracks in his lifetime of absolute confidence. "Impossible," Mordeth declared. "No single world can defeat the combined might of the hegemony. You must be under some form of mental influence or coercion." "I wish I were," Thekmore replied sadly, "but the evidence is overwhelming. Earth has been serving as a testing ground for galactic civilization for 50,000 years. Every aggressive species that arrives thinking they can conquer it either learns to change their ways or becomes part of humanity's ever-growing arsenal of defensive technology." He paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that had seen too much. "Council leader, humanity has been systematically removing predator species from the galaxy while nurturing those that show potential for peaceful coexistence. We are not conquerors in their eyes. We are students who have failed their test." The transmission continued as Thekmore explained everything he had learned about Earth's true nature. The council members listened in growing horror as they realized their empire had just encountered something that made their own power seem insignificant by comparison. "What are your terms?" Mordeth finally asked, his voice stripped of its former arrogance. "Complete reformation of the hegemony's aggressive policies," Thekmore replied. "All conquered species must be freed, all occupation forces withdrawn, and all plans for future expansion permanently abandoned. In return, humanity offers us membership in their coalition, access to technologies we could never develop on our own, and protection from other predator species that might threaten us." The choice was clear, and after witnessing humanity's capabilities firsthand, Thekmore knew there was only one logical response: Council leader, I formally surrender the hegemony to Earth's authority and request integration into their peaceful coalition." The transmission ended, leaving Mordeth staring at a blank screen in his distant capital. Around him, the other council members sat in stunned silence, finally understanding that some warnings should never be ignored. Earth had claimed another teacher, and humanity's patient lessons in the nature of true strength would continue for another species that had learned wisdom through defeat.